Today's AskReddit post. Men of Reddit, what's your creepy girl story? Oh boy, this is gonna be a good one. Let's get started. I was in New Orleans watching some street performers go crazy and a mom came up behind me and fully grabbed both of my ass cheeks. I was 18 and standing next to both of my parents and she said, "Hey, you remind me of my son," which is probably one of the weirdest things to say in that moment. I wouldn't want to be her kid if she's the kind of mom to full on grab her son's ass like that. In a public place. No less. A pubic place. She befriended my younger sister just to get her to ask her to a sleepover. I woke up in the middle of the night with her laying in bed with me. I was 17 yo. She was 13. Girl in my dorm. She had a crush on my roommate. My roommate clearly didn't like and told her several times. Things got out of hand and there were times where my roommate would come running back to the room yelling, "Lock the door. Lock the door," and moments later the girl and her friend would try to come barge in without permission. What's creepy is this next part. Apparently one night we accidentally left our room unlocked and she decided to sneak in and play rub our heads. We didn't wake up but her roommate told us what she did a couple days later. I haven't seen her in about a year and I'm quite glad. She rubs your head softer now. This younger girl who I never even spoke to once in high school had a crush on me. I got a note from her in my locker asking if I wanted to go out with her. I had no idea of how to get it back to her, so I just wrote no and taped it to my locker. Then she started following me everywhere. I would try to talk to her, but she would just keep walking away, pretending I wasn't talking to her. This goes on for like 2 years. Then I was hanging out by myself one day around the neighborhood, and she comes walking up with 3 guys who wanted to kick my ass for some dumb unrelated stuff. She somehow found out about it and brought them to me. After an embarrassing scene with me diffusing the situation with these angry gentlemen, they leave, and she finally sits down on the curb right next to me and starts flirting. All I could do was just stare at her enormous bangs with a WTF expression until she got embarrassed and left. She was ARPing a vampire dude. Could have shown her your main vein. LOL. Not a guy myself, but one I dated had a couple fun stories. One was a girl he got set up with by friends on a blind date. As they went out to dinner, they passed a jewelry store, and she insisted on going in so they could pick out rings for when they get engaged. He paid for dinner and noped right out. The second one went better until he took her back to her place, where she went to the kitchen, pulled a nice big, sharp chef's knife, and told him he was staying the night. He said, "I did what any red-blooded American male would do." Agreed, but said I needed to go to the bathroom, where I promptly crawled out the window and never saw her again. I was like 13-14 years old, was playing Gaia Online, some lame social networking game from like 2002, and met some girl. We hit it off and started chatting over AIM. Definitely did the cringy cybering thing too. Well, eventually she comes clean that she's actually like late 20s, like 28 or something. Being a horny 14-year-old dude, that didn't bother me one bit. So then we start video chatting and she's like, fully masturbating on cam with me. Again, 14-year-old me is not seeing an issue with this. Eventually she starts talking about coming to visit so we can actually have intercourse. Again, not seeing the issue beyond the fact that she really was not very attractive, but even still I didn't think she was serious until she emails me a copy of her flight itinerary. At this point I panicked and blocked her, deleted my AIM and stayed away from the computer for like 6 months and never heard from her again. Whoa, I would have called the cops after the ticket thing, especially that you had evidence. During my last year of high school I would tutor students after school. One day about halfway through the year a new girl came in and sat next to me. The first thing she said was something along the lines of, "Do you wanna see my birth control?" She had an implant in her arm and showed me where it was. She then felt my arm and told me I was hairy. For the rest of the time she kept prying for personal info like who my friends were and where I lived. I didn't see her in tutoring after that. But one day during lunch she came up to my table where I was just chatting with my friends and inserted herself into the conversation before leaving randomly. I heard a few days later that she was suspended for either having drugs or a knife in her backpack. TBH, she sounds like socially awkward or something. Maybe she just wanted friends. In elementary school there was a new Spanish girl who had a crush on me and would literally be non-stop staring at me and following me. Me and my friends tested it. In class they would look and see she'd be staring at me. In recess we went to the very far corner of the field and she followed. So I went back to the school wall and she followed. So I told the teachers and they finally got her to stop following me. She disappeared a few days later. Nobody knew where she went. She finally hit max level for sneak. I started going to a new doctor. The receptionist was cute. So I flirted a bit, in a waiting room, with other patients around. It was pretty innocent. She reciprocated. I figured it was all in good fun. She escalated a bit. Stuff like scheduling me for days she was there, calling me directly with reminders, etc. Then she went into the records, got my cell number, and started texting me, telling me she wants to meet up. She's not happy with her husband. They never have intercourse anymore, etc. I noped out as fast as I could. In the US, this is a major crime. If she's treating your records this way, she's not respecting other people's privacy either. A few months ago, I was walking home from school when this drunk middle-aged woman grabbed me by the arm, wrapped me in a bear hug against a wall, and started grinding on me. I wasn't interested. I had an exam the next morning, and I was just trying to get home. She wouldn't let me go, and she forced my hands onto her breasts and in between her legs. Luckily this was over clothes. She also started punching me for no reason as well as doing extremely racist Asian stereotypes. I'm Asian. Eventually, I got away but I've never fully recovered from the experience and I've basically never been able to talk about it with IRL friends. Doubt I ever will. Edit. Oh yeah, there was someone there who walked by who could have helped me. Instead, he turned away and got out of there quickly. He saw that I was uncomfortable and signaling for help. But he did nothing. You were subjected to a serious and frightening intercordial assault where someone made you feel powerless. That's an awful thing to happen and I'm sorry it happened to you. It's hardly surprising you are struggling with it. Would you consider speaking to a counselor? It could help. Best wishes. It was when I was back in school. There was this girl who used to sit just behind my seat. She was good looking but was very distant from everybody and talked with nobody. Her social skills was zero. But I tried talking to her. We get to know each other. I thought we became friends. We started sitting on the same seat. One day she said, "I know why you're friend with me." I said, "Why?" She says, "You want this right?" Then she pulls her skirt slightly up and panty down and showed me the pussy whose image is imprinted in my memory. We were 16 by the way. Then she giggles. I looked at her exhibition and then back into her eyes. I could see a psychotic smile on her face. She was the creepiest girl I've ever met in my entire life. Poor girl with such a warped sense of society. I wonder if she was abused. Not a man but the creepy girl. My dad told me that when I was little and had something bothering me at night, I would sneak up to him and stare at him until he woke up. He described my white nightgown, plushie and the moonlight lantern light hitting me as very unsettling. My son would do that poop all to me all the time when he was little. Just in that almost asleep period. One time I just saw a shape next to me and I screamed. And he woke up and ran to his room screaming. Another time he walked in on my wife and I having intercoursey time with the lights on. He just started laughing and walked back to his room. I was so glad when he stopped sleepwalking. Our high school basketball team had a female student manager. When we had games at other schools, she would always come up with a reason to need to get something in the locker room when we were showering. But we were so used to her, I guess no one said anything. Coaches probably should have stepped in there. That's not okay. How did she manage to get away with that? She was a pretty good manager I guess. It was my ex-girlfriend. I didn't realize she was creepy until I tried to end it and failed. First few times were my fault for being weak-willed, dumb, all that stuff. She offered me intercourse or something else, or just treated me kindly for a while, and I thought things can be okay again and I resumed the relationship. At some point I actually learned my lesson though, but it was at that point I realized she was actually my crazy ex, and it was sad. The stories are many and crazy, but long and short of it is, she told everyone we were together more than a year after I had really ended it. She enrolled at my university, giving up her dream of a different school she'd always wanted to go to, and actually got into, just so she could cross paths with me. Enrolled in a class I was teaching a lab for without me knowing. Showed up randomly at my parents' house. Told them we were together still. It worked the first time. I was accused of this. My husband and I moved and we happened to buy in a neighborhood that adjoined the one my ex and his new wife bought. Weird. Many years and many children later we moved further away. Guess who lives across the street? It was mildly weird until his wife and I met at the mailboxes one day and talked. Now our kids are friends and ride bikes and play basketball and such. Janice, is that you? A random guy at the bar called her friend a slut and ran off. I guess I looked enough like him, so I got 3 haymakers to the face. I managed to avoid boxing a female in a public bar, which was my goal, and things seemed to subside. She later cornered me in the poopter. It was a single person poopter. I guess I forgot to lock the door. I was informed that I should leave with her and got back to her place or I would be accused of some pretty heinous poop. The bartender saw her on the prowl and sent the bouncer after. He told her to duck off and not come back. On her way out, things got racial. Big words were flying. I was an N-word lover. There were sand N-words everywhere. All of us were remanded to the countries of our origin. She was waiting on the street when I left and tried to follow me, but I just jogged away and she tripped and started crying. It was tragic, yet also funny. Sorry you had to experience the racism. Where was this? An ex who urged me to have intercourse after watching Human Centipede 2. I'm always surprised about the weird poop that manages to turn some people on. As someone who gets turned on by weird poop, me too. I once was hanging out with someone. We were on a getting to know each other phase. Nothing exclusive. I showed her a magic trick. For me it was a very simple magic trick. After the magi trick she started to freak out, saying that she was not into witch stuff or black magic. I tried to explain to her that it was just a simple trick. Since then I got a weird vibe. After that I guess my spidey senses were more active since then and I decided to tell her that I rather not continue the relationship since I started to notice patterns that I didn't like. Did you start to get the vibe that she was going to literally burn you at the stake? I was nice to a freshman girl when I was a senior. She told me that her 2 boyfriends did not satisfy her intercourseally, and implied that perhaps I could. It was a little creepy. I think she was lying to spark your interest that she's active. I am a girl, but I ended up in the same college as my ex's new girlfriend when I was doing my 2nd degree. She is about 4 years younger than me, so I start getting the very strange sensation of being watched in lectures. These are big lecture halls, 300 plus people. I know she's in my course and I heard she's a bit odd. For a visual she was elfish looking, with wild and brushed hair and she generally looked extremely unkempt. She'd come in with yesterday's makeup etc. So I begin to see her everywhere in college. This is a big campus and I am not sure if it's just a coincidence all this time. But I begin to freak out. I get crippling anxiety as she was always there. Her and her friend would make a point to take photos of me during lectures and point and whatnot. I ignored her all the time. I never interacted with her. I just went around doing my own thing. It was so creepy that she was so into keeping tabs and taking pics of me. And then she made a picture of me and my friend her profile pic on FB. Weird girl, I hope she got the help she needed. I am currently in that creepy girl stage. I've wanted to break up with her for a bit now, but every time I try to bring it up she says you're the only reason I haven't killed myself. And honestly I don't know what to do anymore. Break up with her and call 911 if she threatens suicide. You're not a medical professional equipped to deal with that. I am just worried that it'll be too late if I do that. Girl was hitting on me at a bar. I was pretty dismissive and finally she said, "Oh, I'll let you buy me a drink." I responded saying I was married and please leave me alone. She called me a pig and stormed off, and later in the night we caught her following us to another club. Threatened to call the police on her and she stopped. Not so much as the girl herself but to her mom. I dated this girl back in high school and I went over to her house a few times just to hang out and such. But her mom made me incredibly uncomfortable by asking a billion different questions about my past relationships, my intentions with her daughter, even when I last looked at porn, etc. etc. She had to be in the same room as us at all times. She also had complete control over my girlfriend's phone as well, so she monitored every single message her and I sent back and forth. Obviously due to this, that relationship didn't last long. Mission accomplished. The mom, probably. I went to a house party in undergrad with a friend. We were in our other friend's bedroom so we could look through his collection of music downloaded from Napster. This is 2003. I was sitting at the computer cycling through the music when a girl I didn't know who was also at the party started dancing next to me, so I stood up and danced with her as well. About 30 seconds of that. Then she pushed me onto the bed and jumped on top of me. I was pretty drunk and I felt like I couldn't do anything. It felt like she was licking my face. I don't know how much time went by. Probably only 15-20 seconds max. Eventually my friend I came with came back and pulled her off me and took me home. The next day I found out she was a sorority sister with a friend of mine, which boggled her mind that this girl would do this. I made out with a face licker once. Super unpleasant. I was living in New Orleans and this older woman grabbed my nuts from behind. I naturally freaked out, and she laughed and went, "Oh, it's this game we're playing. WTF kind of game is that?" I was so shocked I kinda just walked away. The molesting game. That's what it was. Disgusting old woman. I had to read all the comments just to make sure none of them referred to me. How's that for creepy? LOL. Like, did one of my awkward moments make it in here? Haha. It's okay. You're likely harder on yourself than you need to be. I had a coworker who was about 30 years older than me. We always got along and had good conversation. But she would sometimes just walk over to me and grab my hand and seductively suck on one of my fingers. It was always a what the duck moment as I was 19 or 20, but it never really bothered me, so I just let it happen. Looking back, it's pretty creepy. I'm sorry. An older person coming up to you and sucking on your fingers randomly doesn't bother you? Yay, for real. I can't imagine getting finger sucked at work and just being like, "Huh, alright." Was at a bar with a large group of friends when this girl who was not affiliated with our group came up to me and started unbuttoning my shirt. After a few buttons, she just slid her hands around my torso. I backed off and the girls in our friend group blocked her from coming into contact with me again. About 10 weird girls I didn't know started sending me really creepy Snapchats. "We're coming to visit," that kind of stuff. Then they turned up outside my house and I didn't know how, but they stayed there for a couple hours before getting bored when I didn't come out. They also sent me weird photos of my family they took. Turns out they used snap maps off a friend to get my address and stalked my dad on his way to work. Absolute creeps. My dude, you got a limit who can see your Snapchat location. That is some creepy poop. The one and only time I used Tinder, I hooked up with this girl in Arkansas. The intercourse only lasted until she begged me to come inside her, which is a hot thing to hear, I guess, but not from someone you just met. I told her I'm not gonna do that and she pushes me off and starts crying, saying things like, "I just want baby so someone will love me." I felt kinda bad for her, so I talked her down, bought her some food, and she thanked me and went home. Nothing too weird about that. I just figured she was going through a rough time. It happens. Until about a week later I come home from work and my front door is open. It looked like someone tried to yank it off the hinges. Then I noticed her car parked across the street. This little psycho had gotten poop-faced drunk, drove to my house, broke in, and was sleeping naked in my bed. Cops were called and she panicked and left. Don't know what happened to her after that, but I sure as duck never used Tinder again. I had a girl at an old job who never showered, even went so far as to dye her armpit hair. And of course this is the type of girl who would not stop flirting with me. God, I wish I had confidence like that. There was this girl who was a freshman when I was a senior. I had heard of her through friends and I met her once or twice. I guess she developed a crush on me. A mutual friend told me that she thought I liked her and I said it was a misunderstanding and that I was only interested in being friends. Next thing I know, this girl is showing up at my work multiple times a shift, and when I go to sit out at my car on break she would come up and try to talk to me if I had my windows down. She was transferred to a school for people with problems and there she would take people's phones and try to call me, text me, or message me on social media. Eventually they stopped giving her access to technology and the text stopped. With the recent coronavirus and the closing of every school in my state, this girl was sent back to live with her dad and I saw her in my store the other day. I don't think she saw me and I hope she has moved on. When I was around 9 at a playground, there was this girl who came up to me and said hi. In response, I said hi back. She said, "What's your name?" We were the same age. I say my name. She says cool, and walks away. She comes back 5 minutes later and says hi and I'm weirded out, but I say hi back again. She asks again, "What's your name?" like she was brainwashed. In the end, she probably just had short-term memory loss or something. I had a drunk woman pinch my behind at Universal Studios when I was 16. I was in line for Harry Potter Escape from Gringotts. When I turned to look at her, confused, she tried to act coy. I just turned back and tried to ignore her, but she kept looking at me. Not creepy, just a little weird. One time this girl from my university who, unknown to me at the time, lived close to my house waited at my bus stop till I reached home and stopped me to ask whether she can take the bus home with me on Wednesdays and Fridays. Not sure why. She never followed up on that. I see her in the mornings occasionally, waiting for the university bus. I take the city bus with her parents and her parents give me really dirty angry looks for some reason. I do live 2 hours away from university by bus, so maybe she just wanted company. Again, this wasn't a creepy or traumatizing experience like some others I've read about, but I feel like it sorta belongs. How about locating your sister's number and calling her from halfway across the globe? I guess not too creepy, but when I was a sophomore in HS back in 2012 I had this one girl who would message me on FB every now and then trying to ask me out. I dated a few girls back then and anytime I would be broken up with, this girl would message me that same day and ask if I was single. I would tell her I needed time to move on and she would stop for a bit. One time I said that and then started dating a different girl like 2 weeks later, and then she angrily messaged me about how I hadn't asked her out but started dating a different girl. BTW, I spoke to her in person maybe 3 or 4 times total. Was talking to this girl in high school. We never did anything and I decided to cut her off after a bit. BC, I didn't like how clingy she was. Well, a few days later a friend that had a class with her tells me she overheard her telling her friend how she wanted to key my car and burn my house down. I never confronted her about that, but she seemed like a big enough nut to try it. There's this mentally ill girl in my grade. I don't think her parents medicate her cause she bounces off the walls and is twitchy a lot. She was obsessed with this senior girl her freshman year and would make her wallpaper on her computer and phone pictures of her. She would always talk about her to the aide and it just gave off a super creepy vibe. We found out she had an Instagram and it's full of pictures of this girl and poorly photoshopped selfies. Me and my friends clicked on her following tab only to find she was following a shitload of furry PRN pages. This is another girl from the same school. We only have 150 people in total and there's a lot of fed up kids considering the size. But she is another person with problems. She carries around a suitcase with her and watches the Emperor's New Groove clips on her Chromebook everywhere. Lunch, pay, walking to classes. Who cares, right? She's just vibing. Well, one day in math class she decides to slip her hand down there and start pleasuring herself while watching that movie. No one notices until she starts moaning. Teacher doesn't know what to do besides ask her a math question to get her to stop. In 5th grade she lived like a few houses away and could see me in my backyard from her window. While I played baseball out back she videoed me and even hired her friend to record and talk to me a bunch. Shudder. I'm actually the creepy girl of the story. At 15 I had a massive crush, i.e. creepy infatuation, on a classmate from a class. Gave him a CD with Avril Lavigne's Fall to Pieces on it. He avoided me for a good year. I think I scared him off of women, or he's ain't a cordial. I'm not about to ask. Still awkward 15 years later. At my buddy's cottage in Muskoka one summer, he knew this girl that had a cottage there as well. We all were around the ages of 14-17. This one girl was talking about how she liked to pee in cat litter and then form the cat litter into dildo shape and freeze it. There have been some terrible stories in this thread, but this one made me raise an eyebrow quizzically. I went out with some friends to watch a game at a bar. Once leaving to head back home as we are all walking out, this group of girls clearly hammered at like 11 in the morning walks in and beelines towards our group. One runs out and says you should come with me and jams her fingers straight up and into my armpit. It was pretty warm out so I was sweaty. And this girl takes her hand out after I move her arm away from me and then sniffs her fingers and winks at me. According to my friends, I have never had a more puzzled look on my face. Girl I was casually seeing in college was hitting me up more than I wanted her to be. I told her things were done, and that I wasn't interested in seeing her anymore. She waited outside of my work for me to get off, and then chased me down on my bike to talk. After I told her how weird it was that she did that, she apologized. Then she was waiting outside one of my classes, in a completely different majors hall. Girl wouldn't ducking leave me alone. Groped a guy in front of me. This was all in 4th grade. Sure, we were young, but holy poop, she was still crazy. At my school there is a womanless beauty pageant where a bunch of guys dress up like girls and do a talent show type thing. So I was in my sister's athletic clothes in one part and a 2-piece dress the next time I walked out. After the show I was walking out to take pictures and some old lady, 50-60, stopped me and started talking about how muscular I looked on stage. And she said it like 6 times. But I'm 6'4" and only weigh 165. I'm a spaghetti noodle in human form. So someone's grandma likes drag queens and scrawny dudes. Edit. I have pictures if you need proof of a stick bug in a dress. Just remembered one a bit creepy. I was in a class about learning the basics of a programming language where once you finish the daily task the teacher would ask you to help the others. I finish mine and the guy asked me to help this girl. Once I sit beside her I see the teacher doing some kind of weird gesture with his hands. Honestly, duck that guy. I help her. Class ends, everyone go home. Then later that night I see she added me on Facebook. Next class she sits beside me when she arrives. 10 minutes pass by, she slides me a piece of paper where she wrote, "boyfriend," and I ignored it. After this day I would make sure to arrive late just to sit away from her and delayed my tasks so I wouldn't be asked to help her again. I may be a creepy one too, but that freaked me out. I was working at a grocery store when I was in high and this lady came up to me telling me she would love to have my children. Like she went on about how beautiful our kids would be. This made me extremely uncomfortable because I was 16 and I had never seen this woman in my life, but apparently she saw me a couple of times when she came into the store. Her excuse for saying it was because she loved my hair and skin color. I'm a light-skinned black dude with light brown hair. 6 years later I still think about how uncomfortable that poop made me feel. Bro, You actually watched the whole video. I'd give you a high five if I was a human. Make sure to click the like button and subscribe for more great content. See you next time.